Jordan switching up the music on us today. I like it. Hey there, everybody, and welcome to this Tuesday edition of the Tip-Off Show, the show that sets the stage for all the most important news, daily fantasy plays, and bets on tonight's 8-game NBA slate and 7-game MLB slate. I am your host, Kayla Knierim, and we have a crew today. We've got Greg Ehrenberg joining us, as well as Eric Lindquist. Eric, this is your first time to the NBA/MLB tip-off version. How are we doing today?
Oh, I did it yesterday. You just forgot about me already. It's fine.
I meant Greg.
Nowadays, yeah, it's fine. Fine, go ahead. Yeah, no, go ahead. Introduce other Greg.
I was even looking at Greg when I said it.
It's okay.
There's no way to know that because to us, you're just looking at a camera screen. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm sure that Eric had, a great, memorable show yesterday that everybody, I'm sure all the people are talking about it.
Hey, Trevor Williams pitched great. I'm pretty happy about it.
Greg, your first time on the show, MLB/NBA. But really quickly, you had a tweet over the weekend, and I want to discuss really quickly your thoughts on the new Space Jam, because I think it looks terrible.
Okay, yeah. So I'm happy you're on the same page with me because it just looks stupid to me. And this seems to be upsetting to a lot of people. And I've already talked about this on the YouTube channel also. But so there's a couple things too. Is people going, well, it's only a kids movie. I don't see any kids responding to it on Twitter. It's like it's adults like our age in their 30s who are like really psyched up about this movie. I'm like, well, it looks pretty stupid to me. There's like a lot of lights. There's stuff going on. The plot seems dumb. Not that I'd be watching, Space Jam for some great plot or whatever, but I've said like there's kids movies, like SpongeBob, still watchable. Like Pixar movies and stuff like Toy Story and all that. Those are still watchable movies. This just looks like boring garbage to me.
Eric, did you watch the trailer? Do you have any input?
Eric would be excited about this movie.
I did. I want to be careful. I have friends and places that I don't want to talk about here in Los Angeles. For my fiance used to work over at Warner Brothers. We know some people and such that, it looks okay. It'll be fine. I think maybe. Moving on.
I think my issue is it's just like I was so used to the original, and when you try to redo something that's very good, it's tough for me to get on board. But I'm sure it'll be great.
Yeah, it looks different. I mean, Zendaya voicing Lola Bunny, and then Lola Bunny and the whole situation around that. I don't know. It's just, it seems like it's a very contrived thing, but I'm hoping for the best. I'm coming in. Hey, at least the bar's low now, so that's exciting. Like the bar's already low, and now it can really only get better from there.
I don't think that's true though. People seem to really enjoy and be pumped up about the trailer. And I was like, I don't know. I just disagree because I even said that I thought it kind of looked stupid, and I got a lot of pushback from that on Twitter from my little base. So I don't know.
Okay, well there you go. Then maybe it isn't going to be so bad, but also it could also be very, very terrible.
I just hope everyone has fun. All right, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for countless hours of content on the NBA, MLB, NHL, PGA, MMA, and NASCAR, and every other sport that's in season. Really quick, we want to shout out our sponsor, No House Advantage, who is taking a different spin on daily fantasy sports by offering player prop contests across the NBA, MLB, NFL, and PGA for cash prizes. This exclusively peer-to-peer fantasy sports platform levels the playing field and makes it easier for you to win real cash compared with your traditional DFS sites. The best part is you can join for free today. Just download the No House Advantage app and use promo code Awesemo to receive a first match deposit bonus of up to $20. Be your friends, not the house. Win big with player props today. First up, we've got our bad beats. Last night, we saw James Harden go down to injury early in the Nets game, paving the way to a huge Kyrie Irving game, while DeAndre Bembry and Malachi Flynn from the Raptors were the required cheap value to take down tournaments. How did Monday go for you both?
Yeah, so yesterday was a pretty good NBA slate for me. The one thing that was a little annoying, though, is Malachi Flynn was in 90% of my lineups, and then the Raptors just randomly changed their lineup. So, I mean, I don't know if also, as long as we're talking about my Twitter page, I did try to gather people together. I wanted to start a class action lawsuit against the Raptors for changing their starting lineup, but then Bembry had a good second half, and all was forgiven, all was lost. Bembry also one of the players that rates out really well in our boom bust tool today. But anyway, the thing that was a little frustrating about this is Malachi Flynn was one of the best plays on the slate. And I went from having him in 90% of my lineups to 45 or 50% after he was ruled coming off the bench. So I was still overweight to the field on him, but I wish he would have just started and had that same game because he was really good. And it just seemed like his minutes floor was a little lower than I was expecting after he was coming off the bench, but it ended up not mattering.
Yeah, it was kind of the same situation for me where I had a ton of him and was just kind of expecting that to be a full go. I actually ended up a little bit lower than that still on Malachi Flynn. I ended up on a bunch of Bembry, which ended up being fine. I think I got a little trigger happy while we were on the show, trying to get a little cute with Samanic, which was kind of a ridiculous thing to do in hindsight, but also was just kind of looking at that 3K range with a lot of my builds going to as much Russ as I could possibly get. And that kind of seemed like to be the path to go down there to him and Bembry to be able to do it. But yeah, Malachi Flynn was obviously fantastic. You needed him on both sides. The one guy that was really frustrating was Svi Mikhailuk over on FanDuel, 3,700. Got a bunch of steals and just kind of like spiked an upside there. On DK, I was getting some stuff from people where they were like, oh, I wish I had stuck with Svi and such. And I'm like, yeah, he ended up in the winning lineup, but also he didn't even like bust it open. And considering I ended up on Bembry instead of him at a lot of small forward spots, I wasn't that affected by it considering he beat him straight up. So the Svi Mikhailuk thing on FanDuel, yeah, it was a bummer, but on DraftKings, it didn't really affect me to have 0 of him.
And one thing I'll add to that too, before we go on, is if you were still on speed, then presumably you still would have been on all of the other Thunder player that ended up being garbage, right? So like early in the day, a bunch of the OKC players looked like really good value plays because they only had an 8-man rotation. But then I don't even remember the names of the 2 guys who were on 10-day contracts that ended up being active, but that's what really impacted the rotation had. So like I wasn't really on the Thunder guys yesterday either by the time the slate locked, but like in the afternoon, I thought there were going to be guys who were core pieces of my rotation. But guys like Kenrich Williams, he was garbage yesterday. I would have been really heavy on him. So you had to have been on, like, there's no situation where you would have just been on Spi and not the other OKC guys that sucked.
Agreed.
Pivoting from the NBA, what did we think about the national championship really quickly?
Oh God. And talk about, okay. So what, I don't know. I didn't leave off my bad beat section with that. I mean, right. I was live betting that thing like an idiot, like an absolute idiot. I was trying to figure out some way to dip my toes in further and further down into the rabbit hole. At some point though, I hedged out of a lot of my positions with like Baylor. It was like Baylor plus 12.5 or something when it was like a 16, 17 point game or whatever it was. And that ended up being like, minus 12.5. I just ended up hedging out a bunch of my positions there, but man, I can't remember a game that didn't live up to, there was all the hype that was surrounding it completely a wash. It was awful.
Greg, any thoughts from you?
I don't really like college basketball that much. Like I thought the game yesterday sucked. The UCLA Gonzaga game was obviously great.
We didn't need a game after that, really.
No, but then the finals game. I mean, number one, I didn't know anything really about the teams, like really substantially, other than like I go to Ken Pom, like look at his numbers, and I knew a bunch of people had bet on Gonzaga, so I was kind of trolling and just saying on Twitter like, oh, clearly a fraudulent team. Baylor should have won or whatever. But like, I wasn't really that opinionated on the game.
Yeah, it's one of the most square plays I've ever made in my entire life, and I'm disappointed to be here today.
Oh, well, I'm sorry to hear that, Eric.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Heading over to our NBA key news of the night. Fred VanVleet and Kyle Lowry have already been ruled out this evening, opening up value with the Raptors for what feels like the 50th slate in a row. Eric, are you planning to do anything different with this team in a slower paced matchup against the Lakers than you did on Monday night?
Yeah, I'm not going to fall subject to any news with Malachi Flynn. I'm going to be able to play him and not worry too much about it so long as Fred VanVleet is out. I think he's still underneath 4K. 5,100 on FanDuel is kind of an interesting thing. I don't know when FanDuel became the price that, or the site that reacted quicker to some of this news, but Malachi Flynn got a little bit of a bump there. Still not like the worst spot. I would probably not. I mean, we saw him play 34 minutes without the start, so I can't really say like, oh, I would have no interest. 5,100, I'm still going to get to a little bit there, and he grades out all right for me. But Bembry, so long as he's starting once again, just kind of went off in 30 minutes. He's rated 3K. Greg alluded to the fact that he grades out pretty well on the boom bust tools, so I'm not going to be falling subject to being off of him again. I think I'm going to be kind of going right back to the well with them. The one guy I do want to bring up is Pascal Siakam, who just kind of put up a little bit of a dud there, but still looks like he has a pretty good price tag over on DraftKings. We're seeing right around 27% usage with Terrence Davis, Norman Powell, Fred VanVleet, and Kyle Lowry out the floor, given there's not many minutes in that kind of a scenario, but you do expect that usage to push up to the upper 20s rather than the 23.7% or whatever it was that he had yesterday. I'm looking for Siakam to have a bounce back spot. I'm hoping that some of that ownership comes down on DK, but I doubt that people are going to be failed off of him should Fred VanVleet be out. I will say 7,400 on FanDuel. Love that if FVV is in.
Well, he's already been ruled out, so no real cause for concern.
Well, there we go. Making a run sheet, throwing it in.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Fred VanVleet's out. Pascal Siakam. So yeah, yesterday only had a 23.7% usage rate. But if we go back 2 games ago to the game against the Warriors, which is the game, I'm pretty sure that was the game that Fred VanVleet got hurt. But yeah, in that game, 35.8% usage for Pascal Siakam, 36.7 rebounds, 5 assists. So I think he's certainly somebody to pay up for. I agree with you. Malachi Flynn, DeAndre Bembry, both really good value plays. Bembry has the highest boom rating of anybody on our boom bust tool, at least as far as DraftKings goes. It's just the flat min 3,000 price tag. Where I think this gets pretty interesting, though, is how would you approach the Raptors and Bembry if Flynn starts and Bembry comes off the bench?
I think that Bembry still has viability at 3K over on DK. On FanDuel, I think you got to kind of look elsewhere. 3,700, you're going to probably need to see at least 25, 30 out of that position. I think the viability of him at 3K on DK, I don't know why his price went down $100 randomly, but he's still very much going to be somebody that I'll have to see what that ownership sticks at, because I would assume if he doesn't end up in the starting lineup, that ownership would come down a little bit. But I'm assuming because he is so cheap, he's coming off a big game yesterday, that people will still be going that direction. I don't want to like firmly say one way or the other which direction I'd go, but I would have to imagine 24 minutes, 25 minutes if he doesn't start would kind of be what you're looking at giving him in that scenario. So I would probably have a little bit more apprehension, but I mean, Malachi Flynn is a go either way. I think he proved that yesterday. And I think Bembry would still probably see enough viability. I mean, we're not going to get any Stanley Johnson minutes substantially. We saw 12 out of him yesterday. I'd say that's about the max that you're going to get from him here too. But I would be obviously lower on Bembry, but I would still have some on DK specifically.
Yeah. I have a feeling like he wouldn't end up in my player pool if he comes off the bench, just because we've seen at this point in the season, so much value ends up opening up. And right now, one of the reasons that Bembry rates at least well on DraftKings is because number one, he's cheap. Number two, we expect there's a decent amount of minutes going to him, assuming he starts. But if we look at his numbers for the year, he hasn't been a very good fantasy producer. 17.6 minutes per game, 12.96 DraftKings points. So if we're going to say he comes off the bench and plays someone in the neighborhood of 24, 25 minutes, then I'd only be looking at probably like 17 or 18 DraftKings points from him. So I just have a feeling there'd be better value plays that open up in the event that Bembry comes off the bench.
Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson are questionable once again for the Pelicans. Kyra Lewis Jr. is doubtful, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker has already been ruled out. Greg, assuming both studs are ruled out, what's your interest level in this Pelican squad tonight?
It's so hard to say because I keep expecting these guys from the Pelicans to play and then they just never do. They have to be getting closer to being back soon, right? Because Zion's been listed as questionable how many games in a row now? It's not like he's getting ruled out in advance of these games. Neither is Ingram for that matter. But it's been every game now for over a week. So it's just a long time to be listed as questionable. So my assumption is that these guys play. I have both of them in right now. If they're out, then I guess I'd probably end up going to Lonzo. But yeah, I'm just hoping that Zion and Ingram play because I don't really want to deal with another Pelicans value situation.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I've right now kind of got it situated where I think they're probably going to be out again. I don't really know. It seems like for whatever reason, Stan Van Gundy is like, you either need to be capable of playing 35 minutes or we're not going to bring you in for like 20 minutes and like build up your playing time as we're going across here. It seems like an all or nothing scenario with these guys. And if I think that they're leaning a little bit towards the other direction, I don't know. I get a feeling that we might be looking at another situation. James Johnson, 5,200 over on DraftKings, a little bit more advantageous, but I wouldn't be away from 5,800 should Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram get ruled out. I thought Steven Adams was going to sit coming into today with that concussion, but apparently he's fine. So he's one of the toughest dudes in the NBA. We know that. He's got the track record of it. So I'm assuming maybe they go back to that Jackson Hayes, Steven Adams starting lineup if you get no Ingram and Zion. So I I think you could probably be looking at that direction. 4,800 for Hayes over on FanDuel at a power forward position now. It's just kind of a messy area. This whole team is a mess, but Lonzo Ball is at least the one constant where if you get Zion and Ingram out, 7,500 looks really, really nice. I don't even necessarily expect like the 52.5 that we saw on DK the other night, but I still think there's a lot of viability, and there's definitely the ceiling that he proved that's there, and a built-in floor for sure in Lonzo Ball at 7,500 there should he go.
Is Isaiah Thomas in the player pool? I didn't even think to look.
Isaiah Thomas is, yeah. So we talked about him a little bit last night on the Slate Starter Pod.
Oh, he's expensive.
Yeah, so he's expensive. He's 5,100. He's completely out of play over on DraftKings. He's just kind of like in a weird no man's land there. 3,900 on FanDuel. If you get Zion and you need kind of everything to break your way there. With no Nickeil Alexander-Walker there, I could see a situation where he goes out and plays 18 minutes, and we know that he can go out and get a bucket. He'll probably not be shy. He's getting brought in for a reason. He's not getting brought in to eat up minutes and guard people on the defensive end. Like, we know that that's not the profile of Isaiah Thomas. I would be willing to take a shot or two out of 150 there, but right now I've got him in for like 14 minutes, and that's not going to be nearly viable enough. I have no idea what we're getting into. I mean, even with Denver and with Washington in his last two stints since Boston, just nothing close to what we had, but 3,900 at least makes you think.
I'm going to bring up his, just out of curiosity, it's been a while since we've seen him play. I want to bring up what some of his rate numbers were, at least the last time we saw him play. So 2019, 2020, he played 23 minutes per game, averaged 21 DraftKings points. That's decent per minute production. I actually assumed it was going to be higher. And by the way, that was with a 28% usage rate. So that's a little alarming. The year before at Denver, 15 minutes per game, 13 DraftKings points. That was with a 31% usage rate. But is he really just going to go out here and what do you think his usage would be if he gets on the court? Like, is he just going to continue to chuck?
Yeah. What else did they bring him in there? He's one of the worst defenders in the NBA by every metric. A guy that can't guard anybody. And that was the whole reason Boston was like, look, we can't pay you in this scenario, even though I know you played for our city in the playoffs. He took him on a crazy run. Can't guard anybody. It's very, very difficult to win playoff games and to be a competitive team in the postseason if your point guard position, with how stacked the point guards are around the entire league right now, it's so hard to have a guy playing 5-on-4 because of his defensive liabilities. So my expectation is that he was always going to be a bench player eventually, who came in and played like the Jamal Crawford role, where he just went out and could, if he got hot, you give him a little extra run, and if he doesn't, you sit him down and you're fine. That was always kind of what I felt his profile was going to be going forward. I can't believe we spent this much time talking about Isaiah Thomas. It's fantastic, but I don't know. You got to keep everybody in play there in this kind of a situation. I do think I guess the right way of looking at this is how many minutes would he be playing alongside Ball, because that definitely hurts Ball's ceiling for sure. I think it might make it a little bit, I don't know, not nearly as much as it would affect it if you had Brandon Ingram or Zion in, but maybe, I guess I hadn't really thought about Isaiah Thomas affecting him in that kind of a right, but it surely has to take away something from the top.
Yeah, I think that's really what I just found interesting looking at some of the numbers there, where it's like, because it's been a while since I saw him play and I hadn't really considered him, but it's like, if he's going to be out on the court and actually have a 30% usage rate and play a decent amount of minutes, like, that's actually going to cut into Ingram and Zion's production a little bit going forward. If they're actually going to have Thomas out on the court with these guys. Totally
agree.
Kayla coming in. Thank you. Honestly, you're the best hype woman that two guys could have. Two Gregs could possibly have.
Got you guys. Domantas Sabonis, Malcolm Brogdon, and Jeremy Lamb are all questionable to play against the Bulls tonight, which could open up a bunch of value in the first game of the night. Eric, who do you have your eye on from this team? Should any of them sit?
So the first guy to talk about is, without question, Miles Turner, who is already garnering some ownership. We're seeing that. I think the expectation, and I guess my lean for sure, not that I am a doctor or anything of the such, but I think the expectation is that Sabonis sits. I think that's flat out. I'm not Dr. Ben Ross. So
I was going to say, are you trying to step on Ben's toes here? What's going on?
I'm really not. I would never. Miles Turner, 14% over on FanDuel, garnering quite a bit of ownership there already. I think I would still be getting on top of that. It's just too cheap. I hate locking up positions early in the slate. I really, really hate it. But I find it difficult that I wouldn't get to even some of these other ancillary pieces from the Pacers. If you're looking through, like Doug McDermott, I think would see some increased run. He's still pretty cheap. 4,200 on FanDuel isn't nearly as advantageous as what I was expecting or hoping. We know that Justin Holiday, 4,100, can play just a boatload of minutes and slot in and be somewhat viable there. Really, Caris LeVert is 8K on FanDuel. And I understand that 8K is just a disgusting number, but he's going to garner no ownership here right now. If you get all three of those guys out, I like the ceiling of Caris LeVert, at least at shooting guard. Zach LaVine is kind of like, or was earlier in the morning, garnering a ton of ownership at that position. He's down to 7,200 in that same game. I'm not saying, right now you're looking at a 27% number for Zach LaVine and like 1.6% for Caris LeVert. I think Caris LeVert can outperform him more times than not in this situation if you get all of those guys off the floor. I just want to keep Caris LeVert as like a tournament dart in the back, in the back of my mind, should all these guys be ruled out, because I think he'd kind of be the forgotten man out of the group.
All right. So if Ben's a doctor, what is Eric?
No.
Like,
you already have an idea of where you're going with this.
No, I really don't.
Is there a right or wrong answer?
There's a wrong answer. There's a lot of wrong answers.
All right. Well, I'm stuck in between nurse and veterinarian.
Definitely veterinarian. I'm kind of like a puppy myself.
All right. Nurse Eric Lindquist. It has been deemed. You are, let's say, Ben's apprentice.
This is bullying now.
No, you're
nurses
being
make the world go round.
They do.
Yeah,
this is true.
Yeah, you're a very important position, and you're Ben's apprentice.
But it's coming from your fine. I'll be the nurse to Ben's doctor. I'm all right with that.
What about
there are worse
Thespian
things
Eric
in life than that? Thespian Eric. I mean, that's kind of what I am. So I will. That's a little too on the head, I think.
Yeah,
I think we gotta find a different route around that one.
Okay.
Yeah, Nurse Eric. It's whatever.
I hope that doesn't stick.
It's whatever. Oh, really? Now it's gotta stick. Nurse Eric. All right. Because you give all the progress.
Are you gonna give her takes yet, or are you gonna just like?
I was gonna say, did Greg even talk about this one yet or not?
I don't even remember what we're talking about, but
we're talking about Miles Turner. I really like him. Brogdon, if he gets ruled in, I think he's closer
Pacers.
to playing than Domantas Sabonis is. So I do like going that direction too. TJ McConnell, we've seen not start here. Edmund Sumner was in the winning lineup on Saturday for my boy Rinpack. I've been playing a little bit of Sumner here and there as he's been getting some of these starts because he's been able to be slotted over at the small forward position on DK, but nothing to any kind of relevance. And I think his price has been bumped up a tiny bit, enough to be off of him today.
Yeah, I wouldn't have an issue with Caris LeVert even at an 8,000 price tag on FanDuel. I mean, look at him last game, 31% usage rate. We know he's a playmaker also, so he had 9 assists last game. Like, it's hard to expect. Like, that's about as big of a role as anybody could have. 31% usage rate, 9 assists. I mean, he played 38 minutes. Like, this is as massive a role as you could potentially see from anybody. I think we could go back to what he did last year in the bubble with the Nets, right? And I think that without Sabonis, without Brogdon, Jeremy Lamb to a lesser extent, but that just opens up more minutes if he's out for LeVert also. I mean, then I think we go right back to what he did in the bubble with the Nets, where he was a guy that pretty regularly played, 36 to 38 minutes, usage rate over 30%, was the primary facilitator. So I think that's a pretty apt comparison. And we saw him get as high as like 9,000, if I remember off the top of my head. So I would be fine with that kind of price point on him. As for Miles Turner, it would be hard to avoid him without Sabonis. If you look at his numbers with Sabonis off the court this year, I know most people don't like Miles Turner at all. Like, I don't know. I think everybody who plays DFS had some horrific experience with Miles Turner, because whenever you bring him up on any show, immediately I see in the chat, like, Miles Turner, that guy sucks. But like, he's a very like nondescript player to have that strong of emotions about. But everybody kind of seems to feel that way about Miles Turner. But you look at his numbers with Sabonis off the court this year, the usage goes way up. The rebound rate goes way up. So Turner, who scores like about 45 fantasy points per 36 minutes when Sabonis isn't on the court, he's definitely someone to be interested in without him.
Eric, for what it's worth, I think you could pass as a doctor too.
Thank you. I'll be understudy, Dr. Eric Lindquist.
Dr. Dre Cremore. I can see you, being like a soap doctor.
Thank you very much.
Yes, no? All right.
Yeah.
Jamal Murray is questionable tonight for the Nuggets, opening up minutes at the point and extra usage for likes of Nikola Jokic, Aaron Gordon, and company on Tuesday. Greg, are there any priority plays for you should he be out?
It depends on who ends up starting for them. It's been like, generally, if Jamal Murray was out, I would assume that we would see, Monty Morris move to his starting lineup, but Monty Morris has been hurt himself. And even though he just came back, I mean, even though he came back last game, I'm not sure they're going to want to extend him to play big minutes. He only played 18 minutes last game, so I think he's on a little bit of a restriction. They still have Campazzo, who's also in the rotation to get minutes. And then, like we also mentioned here in the question, like Aaron Gordon's in the mix now. That's somebody else to pick up some of the usage and the playmaking in the offense. Because if you look at the assist numbers for Aaron Gordon since coming to Denver, he's been pretty involved in that part of the offense. So you could see him playing kind of like a point forward role, kind of alongside Jokic the last couple of games, 6 assists and 2 assists for Aaron Gordon. But he's a willing passer, and I think that he would take over kind of some of the point guard duties in a weird way. Like we saw him play that role in Orlando. So I don't know that any one player would stand out as a really strong play for me if Murray is out. I'd feel differently if Morris wasn't back and then we just load up Campazzo, but there's just a lot of guys here.
Yeah, I like Aaron Gordon a lot in this spot. I think he was kind of the guy I wanted to talk about. 6,300 on DraftKings specifically, 7,100 on FanDuel. Tougher for me to want to really invest heavily in that, especially because, I mean, even the last 2 games wouldn't necessarily be like ceilings that you're looking for at a 7,100 price tag. But I do like that number over on DraftKings quite a bit. You're getting some positive leverage in the boom bust tool. And really, this is about timing. And I think this is the other part of it that I wanted to touch on. We have a late swap slate again. Yesterday really wasn't kind of a thing. All of your late swap was basically 10 minutes before lock as you were trying to figure out all the news for 6 different games, 12 different teams, and adjusting from there. I think the timing of this news really matters because I think Aaron Gordon, if this comes out before lock, that Jamal Murray is out. I think Aaron Gordon, people will talk about it, talk about the situation, figure out what to do. And I think people will land themselves on that number because I think out of everybody over on DK, him and Jokic really kind of stand out as having advantageous numbers. And I think Jokic has a ceiling and is viable in any scenario here. But I think Aaron Gordon really kind of takes off. We did see a 6 assist game 2 games ago. You alluded to the assist rate that he's been a little bit more involved in this offense. I think that you look at Monty Morris, who I don't think can really play 22 minutes, 24 minutes yet. I don't think he's in that place where he's able to do something like that. And even if he were, I think Aaron Gordon's kind of the guy on the offensive end that they're getting involved. I mean, they brought him in to try to be competitive in the playoffs, and he's starting to establish himself, has proven that he's a pretty good basketball player all around. Not that we really questioned that before. I think we're just stressed that sometimes he would go off in Orlando and nobody would be on him, and then he's super chalk and does nothing. And it was hard to pull the trigger on those spots. But I would be massively overweight to Aaron Gordon if you get a guy like Jamal Murray off the floor, because I think that usage and all of those other pieces of production go more to Aaron Gordon than Nikola Jokic, who's already going to have them.
Yusuf Nurkic will sit for the Blazers in a late night hammer against the Bucks, opening up Enes Kanter for an increased amount of run. Eric, how much are you prioritizing him compared to some of the other centers on tonight's slate?
I thought I was going to prioritize him a lot more coming into today. I thought that was going to kind of be a spot that I would really want to be going to a lot. But Portland can really play small, and they've proven that they've been doing it quite a bit. They've shown that they don't want to, even before we got Nurkic back there, they had kind of proven that they didn't necessarily need to always have a center out to be able to throw some of the lineups that they want to. I think in this situation, just kind of depending on what all the other minutes end up being for, like on the Clippers side of it, the Clippers are another team that really like to play small, and, getting Kanter off the floor, going to some of those Markieff Morris lineups, you still have a Bach out. So Zubats, I think, is somebody to be looking at on the other side of that ball, where he is on the floor there and can take advantage of one of the worst defenders in the league in Kanter. But I don't know. I think this game ends up playing a little bit smaller, and it gives me some intrigue on Covington and some of these other pieces that might see a little bit extra run that we see in some of those smaller ball lineups. So less interest on Kanter than I was expecting, although I'll see what his ownership ends up being. It looks a little bit low on both sides from where I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things here that we have to talk about with Enes Kanter. One is in relation to Miles Turner, because they're in the same price range, and somebody brought it up earlier in the chat. Where is it? I wanted to shout out whoever it was, but I lost where it was. But somebody said about Enes Kanter, he said that even if Miles Turner's out, he'd have to prioritize Kanter. And I mean, I get that. I want to have both in my player pool, but I would still go to Turner over Kanter for a lot of the reasons that you just said, Eric. Number one, they do have the option to play small. The other thing, too, is, I mean, look at the game script for this game, at least what we'd expect it to be. Portland is 6-point underdogs playing on the road in Los Angeles against the Clippers. The Clippers are one of the best teams in the league. As of now, they have Paul George and Kawhi. And as long as that's the case, they're expected to win most of the games that both of them play. So with that in mind, I think this is a game where Portland could get behind, and they're going to have to get more shooting on the court in order to be able to keep up with the Clippers. So even though Nurkic is out and Kanter is definitely in play for me and somebody to get exposure to in tournaments, I would rather roster Turner without Sabonis if it comes down to that. We're picking 1v1 between the two and somebody's only playing one lineup. Would you agree with that, Eric?
Yes, I absolutely would.
Okay. Yeah, that's really where I stood. And that's what I think is going to be a decision, because you assume Sabonis is out, you're a certified nurse, so we very much respect your opinion when it comes to these types of matters. And I actually do agree with you. I think Sabonis is probably more likely to sit than play. So I think that's a scenario a lot of people are going to be looking at in their lineups, is whether to play Kanter or Turner. And as long as Sabonis is out, I'm going to lean towards Turner.
Agreed.
Eric, I also think you could be a chiropractor.
I would. Oh. I'll take chiropractor. I like chiropractor.
I need to go to the chiropractor, actually.
Mm-hmm. Joel Embiid. Eric, he's professional.
I really don't know where to go with this. It's like, because I love nurses, I love chiropractors, I love people who do anything to take care of other people. Yes. I'm a nurturing human being myself, so I think it does make sense. Nurse is fine, chiropractor's fine, anything, as long as I'm not a doctor, because that position is already filled here at Awesemo.com.
Yeah, I just call Eric friend.
Joel Embiid will be making his second start since returning from a near month-long absence, which should temper our interest in most of the Sixers. However, Ben Simmons, who has been horrendous of late, has a tempting $7,400 price tag on FanDuel that sticks out. Greg, what are you doing here with him tonight?
So that's Simmons, that's the right sound to make before we talk about this.
I mean, the issue is that obviously he gets hurt with Embiid coming back. But it is a really favorable price point, and I definitely have him projected well on a points per dollar basis. But I think there's other point guards I'm going to prefer to get to than Ben Simmons. Like, if it comes down to it and he just ends up being a guy who's, like 2 or 3% on, then yeah, I'd be fine with being overweight to the field on him on FanDuel at least. DraftKings a little different story, but he's a low priority GPP play for me right now. Not somebody that'd be overly invested in, but like if he ends up in, like 5 to 10% of lineups, I'd be fine with that. I don't prioritize him very much. Generally, whenever Embiid's there, and then something I don't really look into matchups too much, but historically, Ben Simmons has really struggled against the Sixers. This is a team that really seems to have found out a good way to defend him. They really clog the paint, at least in the past when they're playing against Simmons. So if you look at some of the games he's had, especially in the playoffs against Boston, it's generally not gone well for Simmons. Like, I think this is a really tough matchup for him just because it's a team that's figured him out. There's other point guards I prefer, but like a low priority GPP play for me.
So this is where I'm really, really hoping that we get Malcolm Brogdon. I hope that Malcolm Brogdon can be a late addition, because then I can just funnel a lot of that ownership that direction and kind of live with the result of it. Because Ben Simmons is still going to garner ownership. We've got him north of 20 here right now on FanDuel. It's obviously just such a good spot. And you would, like, even with Embiid there, 7,400 is ridiculous. Like, it's just a low number to be seeing on a guy who's relatively, you talk about historical pricing. He's been over 8K for so long, but if you're reading into the streaks of it and into the hot streak, cold streak of it, I mean, he's been on a terrible run here of late. And I think Tobias Harris, when Embiid has been off the floor, has been the guy that you've basically wanted to target. They do have other pieces that can contribute with everybody else out, whether it's Maxey or whomever else. Like they've had other pieces here in the past that have been able to pick up some of the offensive slack, and Ben Simmons just kind of takes a back seat to it. But I don't know. I think I'm right now planning on just playing whatever the field has at that number and living with the result of it, because I can't stomach another situation where I'm way overweight to Ben Simmons. Looking at that, I mean, obviously Maxey's not there, but Shake Milton's 5,300. You're not going to play him. You're not going to play any of these other pieces that we were taking punts on with Joel Embiid out there. So it's really like, do you want to play Embiid or do you want to play Simmons in lineups? And like Embiid just, I don't think has enough minutes to get on top of like a big ceiling there yet, especially on FanDuel where you're looking at 10-8. It's just kind of a wrong pricing for him there. So Ben Simmons is the only piece of this entire team that I have interest in. And I hate how much I've been over the field on him the last couple slates. So I think just playing him wherever the field is and moving on with my life is probably the safe route to go.
All right. And that will do it for our key news of the night. Heading now over to our one-on-one in these battles between stars. Which player would you rather have in NBA DFS or prop bets tonight? We're going to start with Miles Turner. Could be looking at an increased role for the Pacers on Tuesday, while Robert Williams continues to put up solid outings for for his Celtics squad night in and night out. Eric, assuming Sabonis sits, who are you taking in this one-on-one, Turner or Williams?
So, I mean, right now we've got Williams getting close to the ownership there over on FanDuel from the last run that I have. I'm still going to take Miles Turner. And I know people don't like to play Miles Turner. I know that it's not the popular thing. I know that he's already the second highest owned center that we have over on FanDuel here at the moment, but I would be massively over the field. And I know it's the first game of the night and I hate locking in spots. It's like one of my pet peeves of playing DFS, but I find no way around it. It's just too low of a price if you get Sabonis off the floor. I know blocks are kind of a noisy stat and such. And I think what people really hate about it is that Miles Turner can spike a block upside in any matchup, whether Sabonis is there or not. And that kind of level of unpredictability can lead to ceiling games on a site like FanDuel where you see 3 points per block. And so regardless, I think you're going to need a couple to get on top of a ceiling, but I really like going to him, massively overweight. That's not to take anything from Robert Williams, but we've seen him kind of capped around 26 minutes, 28 minutes here of late. It was great seeing those minutes into the 30s a couple times. I really, really enjoy that because he's, I believe, from when we talked before, one of your highest owned best ball centers. And so a guy that you're invested in heavily and cheering for. So, but for tonight, for DFS purposes, I'm still going to side with Turner.
This is a tough one for me. Like you said, I may have a little bit of a bias towards Robert Williams for a couple of reasons, right? Number one, it's already somebody I'm pretty invested in. But number two, the reason I'm so invested in him is because I already like Robert Williams. So there's a couple of things that go into play there. But as of the minutes for Robert Williams, so against the Pelicans on March 29th, he played 32 and a half minutes. Then he missed the game due to illness. He was a late scratch, literally like 30 seconds before a slate started. The games after that, he played 26 minutes against Houston and then 25 and a half minutes against the Hornets. But the scores of those games, they beat Houston by 16. The starters didn't finish the game. The game against Charlotte, this is a lot of numbers to do what it looks like. So 30 points. They ended up winning that game by. Starters didn't finish. And Robert Williams got into early foul trouble. He ended up picking up 5 fouls in that game. So, I mean, I just look at that, and I think that should this game be competitive, I think Robert Williams probably plays over 30 minutes as long as he does not get in foul trouble from Joel Embiid. So to me, Turner and Williams are going to be really close. My lean is towards Williams, but if there's a massive ownership gap between the two, I would then favor whichever one is lower owned.
All right. The 2 late night hammer game goes on slate. Wait,
that was terrible. That's my fault. Don't listen to me. That was terribly written. Who put the question mark on the teleprompter?
All right. Well, not an English teacher, Eric. We know that's not going to be his profession.
Yeah.
Steph Curry squares off with the Bucks in the highest total game on the slate, while Damian Lillard goes against the Clippers in the game with the second highest total. Greg, who are you prioritizing in this one-on-one, Curry or Lillard?
It's Steph for me, and I've not had very many Steph slates this year, but still I look at all the circumstances surrounding Lillard, really tough matchup against the Clippers. The other thing, too, is just it's been an ongoing issue for Damian Lillard's fantasy production as of late is that CJ McCollum's there. He's somebody else who takes up a ton of usage, also has a pretty big role in terms of playmaking for the Blazers. And for a really long time, Dame was just the only guy in the Portland offense, and he had to do everything for them. And now he is another guy to share the ball with. Another thing, too, is that they don't need Damian Lillard to play 40 minutes every game. That was something they had to do basically whenever they were playing in a tight game before. Dame had to play over 40 minutes. He has not played over 40 minutes now since March 16th against the Pelicans. So the minute ceiling isn't quite as high as it was before. There's a little bit less usage. So give me Steph Curry, especially because the Warriors really need to start winning games or else they're going to fall out of the playoff picture.
Yeah, it's a coach speak thing too. He was going back and forth talking about how all of his teammates needed to speak up. I say coach speak knowing that it's Steph Curry that runs that team and not Steve Kerr. But Steph Curry basically is like, these guys need to step it up and start playing better. Well, I really think that starts with Steph Curry just kind of taking control of this offense and going a little bit nuts. He doesn't have a CJ McCollum next to him. Kelly Oubre's had some ceiling games. Andrew Wiggins is all right, but this is Steph Curry's basketball team, and he's going to get all of the shots and usage that he really wants to go to. I like him. I like Draymond Green a lot for tournaments as well. But I definitely think when prioritizing one or the other, I definitely like Curry.
2 Nicolas who play center are in action on Tuesday, with Jokic facing the lowly Pistons at home, while Vooch draws the Pacers in the first game of the night. Eric, which Nikola do you prefer in this one-on-one?
So I just thought it was fun because they're both named Nikola, but that's stupid. Anywho, I really think that this can be another part of that Jamal Murray piece of news. I know it's only going to be a slight bump for him compared to like Aaron Gordon, which I talked about earlier. But if you get Jamal Murray off the floor in general, I'm going to really side with the Jokic part of this, and I will pay the toll in order to get up to him. But as it stands right now, if Murray were to give it a go and we find out some news about that coming in later, I would hope that I would have some Vooch. That would have to come out before lock because this is that 7 p.m. start time game. But Vooch has been pretty darn consistent here of late, playing right around 32 minutes here each time out. He went out and beat Brooklyn in that last time out, and he's starting to take 27+% usage the last 2 games. Zach LaVine's kind of given up a little bit of the offense to him there. We've seen that with his price coming down there of late, but not that I'm off of Zach LaVine by any means. Still a 33% usage against Brooklyn that last time out, but Vooch with no Sabonis in there, it would just be him versus Miles Turner. I do like getting to Vooch more as it stands right now on a site like DraftKings where you're playing 2 centers, and I can kind of mix and match a little bit of those guys. But not that I'm saying Nikola Jokic is a bad play, but pretty darn expensive around the industry should Jamal Murray be in. Yeah,
so I think there's a lot of guys now that Aaron Gordon's on the team. There's a lot of guys to just take up usage and possessions on Denver. So it's not to say that Jokic isn't an elite fantasy option still, but I mean, look at his last 4 games, 53 DraftKings points, 34, 39, 48. Like, I mean, we're looking at, decent, but not great production. And I do think it's a little different if Jamal Murray's out, but still, I think there's a lot of guys to pay up for on this slate. The center position is pretty loaded. I don't know if I want to prioritize getting all the way up to really Jokic or Vucevic, if I'm honest, but I'd rather get to Vooch than Jokic just because I question a little bit what Jokic's upside is now, just looking at some of his production's been over the last few games with Aaron Gordon in the mix. It's been a long season and there's been a ridiculous workload that's been put on Jokic's shoulders. And now they have another capable playmaker there in Aaron Gordon. And I think that's also partially why the usage for Jokic over the last few games, 21%, 26, 29, 20. And for the season, he has a 28% usage rate. It's gone down. And I think that with Aaron Gordon there's just more possessions that Jokic could take off and maybe really try to keep him fresh for the postseason. So I prefer Vucevic just for the cheaper price point.
All right, good stuff. MLB season is now in full swing, and we have a deal for you. Get your first 9 days of Awesemo Plus MLB for just $9 when you use promo code STARTING9. That's starting with the numeral 9. This gives you access to everything we have to offer for MLB DFS, including player projections, ownership projections, top stacks, lineup builder, and our premium Slack channel. This offer is valid through April 9th, so stop guessing, start winning. Join Awesemo Plus MLB today. Eric, we don't need you to be a doctor because you are an actor. Q Jordan. I forgot I had this. I was messaging with him earlier.
What is this?
Oh no.
I'm waiting for it to pop up. There it is. He's got his SAG card, folks. Like, he doesn't need to be a doctor. You are legit.
Oh, well, he could pretend to be anything.
I can pretend all of
I
the
said
things
Dr. Drake Ramore. Yes, we all hung out over the weekend. I got to meet his lovely better half. We had a great time, but that was a picture I took and I forgot I had it. And I hope you're not mad at me for
look at me. We're just fine. Thank you.
All right. Moving right along to biggest bat. What a transition. And now it's time to head to the diamond for some of the top bets and plays on tonight's MLB DFS slate. Which of these top 5 odds getters on OddsShopper do you think is the best overall bet to hit a home run tonight? We've got Anthony Santander. Did I say that right? Santander.
Santander.
255, Aaron Judge plus 255, Giancarlo Stanton plus 255, Gary Sanchez plus 255, and Gregory Polanco plus 255. Guys, discuss.
So I'll go first. I mean, if these are just the same odds for all of these guys, like I don't know how the answer couldn't be Giancarlo Stanton, who by far is the most power of any of these guys. He had a home run, I think 471 feet yesterday. Just I like when a player hits just a no doubt home run and just the outfielders kind of as a courtesy will like turn around for a second and pretend like they might catch it. We're like, hey, we don't want to hurt our pitcher's feelings. We want to make it seem like this ball wasn't hit a million miles. So, but I mean, Stan, as long as he's healthy, he is to me still the best power hitter in baseball. The issue is just that he's only played 15 games per season on average over the last couple of years. But yeah, as long as he's healthy, I think he's the best power hitter in baseball.
Yeah, sorry about that, Kayla. All of them are listed plus 255. It just seems to be the number today for all of these guys up front. I agree with that. Giancarlo Stanton, the best power hitter out of the grouping. Not that Aaron Judge can't go there. Gary Sanchez has been hot of late, but also if you want to talk lineup order, I think you get more at bats and more opportunity for either Judge or Stanton, just because a solo home run or a multi or a grand slam, they're going to be the exact same thing. They're a home run, and that's what you're trying to target. So I'll go to the top order guys with either Judge or Stanton and kind of lock it in at the exact same odds.
All right. Heading over to biggest arm, which of these top 5 odds getters on OddsShopper do you think is the best strikeouts over bet tonight, and which is the worst? We've got Gerrit Cole 8.5, Yu Darvish 7.5, Dylan Bundy 5.5, Marcus Stroman 5.5, and German Marquez 5.5. Eric, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm going to go to, I know this doesn't sound great, but I like the Yu Darvish side. I really like going to him at 7.5. I think, again, I like targeting pitchers in new environments, coming off of by far the best, given it was in a small sample, but best year of his career. I do get apprehensive. Alex Baker had talked about how San Diego, generally it's very consistent weather, and it's usually a better ballpark to target when you get it really, really hot in the summer at some of these other ballparks in the East and in the Midwest. But 7.5 feels a little bit low against a team that just really doesn't hit righties very well. You really want to be targeting the Giants up against left-handed power or left-handed arms. You want to be kind of coming at them with so much right-handed power in that lineup. Brandon Belt, Crawford, those lefties really don't scare me whatsoever. I'm going to be going to the Yu Darvish side.
Yeah, and then just to tag that, something else that's really encouraging about Yu Darvish is to start the year, pitch counts have been really difficult to predict for pitchers. Like we saw yesterday, Jacob deGrom, chalk play, ended up having a really good outing for fantasy purposes, but only threw 77 pitches and came out of the game. So that's a really difficult thing to predict right now, because we don't know how deep pitchers are going to be allowed to work into games. This is Darvish's second start of the season. The first, we've already seen him start once, and he got 93 pitches. So to me, he's full go, right? And that we can't say that about very many other pitchers, although I feel the same way about Gerrit Cole, but Yu Darvish has a lower strikeout total for him. But just given that I have no real major concerns about how deep Darvish is going to be allowed to work into the game, that's what makes me feel a little bit better about his over strikeout prop versus what a lot of other players are.
All right. And that concludes the MLB portion of the show. Heading back over to the NBA, but before we do, one of the biggest edges in sports betting is always shopping to find the best line. Betting lines change by the minute and can vary greatly depending on which book you are using. That's why it's important to use Awesemo's OddsShopper to find the best line available on the game or player prop you are betting on and give you that edge to help you beat the house. Head on over to oddshopper.awesemo.com, where we compile the best bets available for game lines, player props, and player and team futures, all updated in real time. Which brings us to our no house advantage, prop or not. Let's get back to the NBA for no house advantages, prop or not. Here are some of no house advantages props of the day for key players. Do you like the over or under on them, and how many points would you assign? First up, we've got Kyle Kuzma over under 5.5 rebounds. Greg, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so with the Lakers, right now we have Andre Drummond finally expected to play again. What are we going to actually expect from Andre Drummond? Say, no clue. The first time he was with the Lakers was it was just an absolute disaster. He was terrible when he was on the court. He got into foul trouble, then he got hurt. He's playing again. I assume he's going to end up starting because he started last game. Don't know that for sure, but I think the thing that really becomes the takeaway here is that is going to take away likely some rebounding opportunities, some playing time from guys in the front court. But even with that said, the 5.5 rebound total for Kyle Kuzma is ridiculously low. So I don't even think the Andre Drummond is going to matter all that much as I thought it would. And so I look at the number and, 5.5 is just so low for Kuzma, what his role has been. So yeah, I mean, even with that game where Drummond started, like Kuzma still ended up playing significant minutes. So I don't think that he's going to totally just make Kuzma relevant.
Yeah, I didn't really know how to involve talking about Drummond because he's a big piece of the FanDuel slate, specifically where he's 5,200. He's garnering the most ownership at the position by far right now, because 5,200, if you got 21 minutes, 23 minutes of Drummond would already be viable. If you got up to 26, it would be even more. But still, Kyle Kuzma with his increased run, and we just have very little that we really know of what that situation is going to look like for Drummond going forward. We basically saw a half of basketball out of him, 14 minutes in that first outing. So I like going to Kyle Kuzma here. 5.5 is just a low number as is, regardless of him being alongside in this situation, regardless of Drummond being inserted into it. But really like getting on top of that, taking the over for sure.
Eric, heading right back over to you. Montrezl Harrell, 27.5 points plus rebounds plus assists.
So this is going to be an under, I think. And this is kind of what we're talking about too with Drummond, where he is going to directly affect Montrezl Harrell more than he's going to affect anybody else on this entire team, besides maybe Marc Gasol, who might just not play. But I really like going to the under of just about everything with Montrezl Harrell over on NHA today. I know that we are talking about it being unpredictable, but also you're going to need like the 30 minutes out of Montrez to be able to get to around this number. And I just don't see that happening today, so long as Andre Drummond's a go. Now, if Andre Drummond does not go or whatever else, if he were, he's expected to play here, but if he doesn't or whatever else happens leading up to it, yeah, you could be looking at an over here or maybe just not playing this one in general. But as it stands right now, a great under on NHA.
Yeah, so if we go over to what Montrezl Harrell did the first time that we saw Andre Drummond active, which was only a brief period that he ended up playing in that game, but in the first half at least, the minutes were about split in between the two. So that leads me to think that if Drummond plays, and by the way, Marc Gasol has played really well over the last couple of games, so I don't know that he's just going to totally fall out of the rotation. Like, this could be a situation where there's like 20 minutes from Drummond, 20 minutes from Harrell, 8 minutes from Gasol. Maybe there's a little bit of time where Gasol or Harrell end up sharing the court with Drummond or something like that. But I have to think that if Drummond plays, it's going to really marginalize Harrell, and that's going to make it tough for him to hit over prop. So I agree with you. Harrell is an under as long as Drummond ends up starting.
All right. And Kendrick Nunn over under 13.5 points, Greg.
Yeah, so Kendrick Nunn, by the way, somebody who I've really not thought about much for this slate, which is what makes it really weird that his props are so high, because he's somebody who I was saying, like, is there some news item I'm missing where Kendrick Nunn is such high points props? Because he's totally irrelevant, because the Heat are a pretty healthy team right now, and that hasn't been the case for a lot of the year. The other thing also is not only do they have, their guys like Jimmy Butler active, Goran Dragic is healthy, Tyler Hero's healthy. I don't know off the top of my head how many games they've had all three of them active for. It hasn't been very many, though. But now Victor Oladipo is in the mix. So Kendrick Nunn is somebody who it's really difficult to predict many minutes for. In fact, he might not even be in the rotation at all. So that makes it very easy to get to the under on Kendrick Nunn.
Yep, he's the 10-pointer of the day for sure. I think taking the under here on a guy who, again, might not see the floor, fantastic spot to go.
All right. Once again, as always, shout out to our sponsor, No House Advantage. Check them out. Moving on to DFS Hedge. How can you hedge daily fantasy lineups with a bet like taking the over on a prop for a player you're fading tonight, Eric?
So I'm going to say the opposite. I'm going to go to a guy that I'm planning on playing should the news break this way. But if you go over to OddsShopper and you sort by the win percentage, the guy who's the top on points is Caris LeVert, taking the under of 19.5 points. I think that news, again, I want to take that number probably regardless of how this news plays out, and maybe possibly putting that into play, because he's kind of my low owned tournament play on the night. And if he doesn't play well, those lineups are probably already dead, and he probably didn't hit 20 points. If he does hit 20 points, I'm probably looking at a situation where I'm very happy with some of his production. So if you were going to hedge, which I know Greg isn't a big fan of in any scenario, because you don't want to be betting against the players you want to have do well, I think that makes sense. But I think in this situation, because that win percentage is at 69%, you're getting a pretty good number at a couple of these books. I think it does make sense if you want to parlay some of your action, or I guess hedge some of your action in this situation, taking that Caris LeVert under.
Well, Eric, for basketball, I don't really like to hedge, but baseball is a different story, because I play baseball GPPs way different than I play NBA GPPs. So James Paxton, who is starting for the Mariners today, started his career. He came up, the prime of his career was with the Mariners, briefly left, signed a big contract with the Yankees, was there. Now he's back with the Mariners. I don't have no clue what to expect from James Paxton. He's a very favorable price tag on both FanDuel and DraftKings, but his numbers last year were terrible. He was starting to pitch a little bit better right before he got hurt, but his velocity was way down. He went from a guy who was throwing one of the hardest throwing starting pitchers in baseball, average fastball velocity 95 to 96 miles per hour, to was struggling to crack 90 at a point last year. So I come to, and by the way, he pitched really, really well in spring training.
Yeah.
So I don't know what level to expect from him this year. If he's at the level he looked like in spring training and was a couple of years ago, then James Paxton is one of the best pitcher plays on the slate. If he's the guy who started the year last year for the Yankees, who was throwing 89, 90 miles per hour, he's probably getting his face kicked in against the White Sox. So there's a wide range of outcomes here. So for GPPs, I think that Paxton is a good pitcher to target. In lineups that don't have him, I'm going to have some interest in stacking the White Sox because they're a team that hits left-handed pitchers really well. And Paxton just might be washed, but I don't know because there's very limited sample size on how much he pitched and how much really anybody pitched last year. And we don't have velocity numbers from spring training. So wide range of outcomes here. And I think that's a good hedge spot.
All right. And don't forget to check out the win percentage and ROI percentage tools on the oddshopper.awesemo.com on the I added a the to see some of the highest probability bets according to Alex Awesemo Baker every single night. That is going to take us to good dog, bad dog. In real life, we know there is no such thing as a bad dog. In betting and DFS, there are a lot of underdogs who may have no chance in their game. So guys, who's a good dog to target tonight and who's a bad one? Greg, we're going to start. Give us both your good dog and bad dog for the sake of time.
Oh, at the same time. Oh.
I know.
Oh boy. So for my bad dog to start, I'm actually going to say the Boston Celtics playing at home against the 76ers. And now that we have Joel Embiid healthy, Boston's also, I mean, just a 500 team for the year. They've really played below expectations. They have one of the worst records against the spread in the NBA. And while I do think the Sixers should be favored this game, they are, like, I just think the line should be wider than 2 points. So the Boston Celtics, I think that they are a bad dog. As for a good dog, I'm going to say the Indiana Pacers if we get news that Sabonis actually plays. So right now, the Bulls are favored on the road in Indiana by 1 point. And if Sabonis, if Brogdon, if those guys end up playing, I think Indiana probably ends up closing somewhere like a 3.5, 4 point favorite. So depending on the injury news there, those are always the betting situations that I like to attack. That would be my good dog as long as the news breaks the right way.
Yeah, just like in DFS, you want to be by your computer ready to react. I think have your sports book open and ready to react to whatever that news ends up being coming through. I really like, I mean, that could be the good dog and the bad dog for me. I would really like to get to the Pacers and be on that number on the +1 at a bunch of sports book. I would really like to have that should Sabonis get ruled in. I don't think the other two pieces matter nearly as much. But if you get news Sabonis is out, I really want to be on the Bulls side of that quickly. So just be ready to react to the news.
Awesome. And make or break, which player or game currently looks like a make or break spot to you on tonight's slate, Eric?
I think the Raptors are going to be a make or break for a lot of people. Some of those value pieces, some of the other spots. So I think that that's kind of a given if you decide to go the Bembry, Malachi Flynn route. So I won't necessarily say that. For me, one of the things that I'm kind of planning on, and we've talked through it a little bit, is Denver. I'm going to try to react to some of that news with Jamal Murray, and it's specifically in the form of Aaron Gordon on DK. And it sounds really strange to be saying that out loud because Aaron Gordon chalk day never really goes well. He's not chalk, and that's the whole reason that I really want to be on top of that.
For me, it's the injury report. I mean, like at this point of the year,
that's a sharp take.
I have no clue because I just don't know who I'm rostering right now. And like, I was thinking about this yesterday is like, in terms of like putting out basketball content earlier in the day, like if you had to ask me who I was rostering at even like 6:01 p.m. Eastern time yesterday, it would have been totally different than the guys I was rostering 50 minutes later. So the injury report just changes so much at this time of year. Also, all the more reason, follow at Awesemo_NBA and our guy, the news god. Because I mean, he doesn't even make sense to me. The dude's like plugged into the NBA news like it's the Matrix. Like he just knows it immediately as soon as it comes out. But it's just so important at this time of year because, like, more so than any individual plays or like any good values, just being up on the injury report and knowing which guys are playing, which guys end up becoming the good values after injuries come out. Like that's where 99% of the edge is coming at this point of the season.
All right. And last but not least, fade of the day. Is there one game, player, or team that you anticipate you'll have a lot less interest in than the rest of the public, Greg?
Yeah, also the injury reports because they're notoriously inaccurate this point of the year. I don't like them very much. And,
soft take. We're looking for a hard take here. Come on.
Yeah, the injury report. I'm no friend of mine. We're fading the injury report and the guy in the YouTube chat who was posting all his favorite colleges for the last hour.
Oh boy. I'll say my fate of the day is Trae Young. I continue to be up against Trae Young, trying to just basically target his floor. He doesn't feel like a guy who can really go for 55 plus right now with Bogdanovich playing to the level that he's at, garnering a crazy amount of ownership over on FanDuel and DraftKings. So it's scary, but I had none for the last like month or so. And I haven't been really disappointed with the outcomes of late. So continuing to fade Trae Young.
Look at that. On the dot. Great stuff from you both. Thanks to Eric. Thanks to Greg. Thank you all for tuning in. I know there's been some comments in the chat about the time. We did switch to 3 p.m. Eastern. However, tomorrow we're back to 4. So make sure you like and subscribe so you know when we're always going on, and, follow us on Twitter. We always tweet about it as well. I'm Kayla Knierim, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.